Good morning. Happy Thursday to you. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Nate Bauer with me on the BWI Live Show. We are talking about Penn State football as always. It's the bye week though, Nate. So, we don't have a game to preview. There's no official game preview of the bye week. I can throw in a lame joke about Penn State's going to go 1-0 this week because they defeated the bye. But did they? Did they get better this week, Nate Bauer?
Oh,
that's the goal of the bye week.
Maybe, yeah. I think certainly they're trying for that. That was a very clear intention, right? James Franklin, after the game on Saturday at Northwestern, made immediately clear, and it was a catchphrase that he repeated often, was that This is not an off week. This is a bye week for. So anyway, look, they obviously returned to work on Sunday. They had practice going through. Today, actually, this afternoon, they'll have a final practice that's being operated by the GAs and the coordinators, but all of the other assistant coaches and James Franklin are out on the road recruiting. So recruiting today, tomorrow, and Saturday. They're all back on Saturday night, and then they get back at it on Sunday morning.
I'm going to count that. I'm going to count that as a recruiting update from you. That you are aware of their schedule. Yeah. I love it. Even though Fitz can't be here today, we're getting some recruiting information during the bye week. I love it.
Yeah. Now, for all of your recruiting needs, go to bluewhiteillustrated.com on the On3 network. Subscribe monthly, yearly, whatever you want to do. Just subscribe, and you can get all of that access to that information from our experts, our actual experts, Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz.
Yeah, they're the ones that are actually going to get you that recruiting information, which we're going to have the BWI Mailbag today, and it's going to be surprisingly light on recruiting questions and information because I always let everyone know who's going to be on the show, and no Fitz, we're not really getting into recruiting questions today, but we have a full jam-packed show, including a new segment, which was the brainchild, or at least was proposed to me by Nate Bauer. So I am going to give you credit that you created the new True or False segment coming up in just a little bit with some overly dramatic introduction titles. So just prepare yourself. I don't want to catch anyone off guard. We've got some real game changers coming up in just a little bit. And of course, the mailbag is a Thursday staple. That's coming up. We got a lot of off-week questions, a lot of looking forward, a lot of introspection from the Nittany Lions, and we're going to get to all of that. Some of these, Nate, by the way, have a clear common theme, and they all have to do with the offense.
Oh. How about dissatisfaction? Is that one of the themes?
Yes. Yeah, and we also have our regulars, like, hey, move Caden Wallace to right guard. We still have those, but then we have some new ones and some new common themes through the they're mostly on the offense. No one cares about the defense being elite. They just want to know about the offense because it's causing them a lot of anxiety and heart palpitations.
They're winning a lot of games by a lot of points, but it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. Let's indulge. Let's go. Let's go for it. What separates the number 6 team in the country from being the number 1 team in the country? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, let's just start there before we get to practice or anything else. Just kind of set this up of 5 games through the season.
Yeah.
What's your general outlook on the Penn State offense and their efficiency, which is I think the buzzword this year for this offense, going on long drives and completing for points?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's been very efficient. I don't know that they have played a complete game, right? During any of the 4 FBS games that they've played. So I look, this is not a situation where they are absolved of all sins, right? Like there are problems, there are things to get better at, but a lot of them are exactly what we previewed, right, for more or less 8 months of what they were going to be, right? The quarterback is a sophomore. He's really good. Okay. But he's not perfect. Okay. Like everyone has to come to grips with that. The receivers have a very good receiver in Keandre Lambert-Smith. He's not getting enough credit actually for how good he has been. But there's a significant gap after him in the sense that Trey Wallace is good as well, but he's been absent. We haven't seen him. He hasn't been able to play, obviously with an injury between week 2 and week 3. So the fact that they've gone they've just had this rotation of that next tier down, and you can see it playing out week by week that they're searching for answers. And I'm not sure that they're there, right? I'm not sure that Dante Cephas is the answer. I'm not sure, Omari Evans, right? What's his health? What status does he have? Malik McClain, Malik Mega, Liam Clifford, right? All of these guys have had some bright spots, and all of them have had some not so bright spots. And so, that is the core shortcoming, I would say, of what this offense is. And because of it, there's a trickle down effect that is making its way into the other units, and something that people are just going to have to get used to, and will put Penn State to the test. But it doesn't mean necessarily that they're, damned to lose, right? The best teams on the schedule.
Joe Bott says this offense is calm and methodical. Kyle Haney says, I'm a simple man. Penn State starts 5-0 and I smile.
There you go, Kyle. There you go.
Yeah, Kyle. This is always the I feel like I see two schools of thought when it comes to Penn State football and how you treat your obsession/hobby. And I'm this way, Buffalo Bills fan. Tre'Davious White goes down with an Achilles injury. I'm like, okay, so there's the season. They last year they lost 3/4 of their secondary. They're not going to be able to beat Kansas City if they don't have good players. Penn State, the same thing that you just laid out of, they're not a complete team, so they're not going to beat other complete teams. And then there's the people that enjoy the moment, and I am jealous of those people. I am so jealous of Kyle and his ability to just be like, you know what, they're 5-0, and I really enjoy that. Steven says, and Stephen Keel points this out correctly, what school doesn't have problems? Alabama doesn't have a quarterback that they're still trying to find their quarterback. And we always go to Alabama, Nate. There are other schools in the country that are also good at football. But of course, the last 10 years has conditioned you to think Alabama equals the best.
LSU, anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, everybody has challenges that they have to overcome. And I do think that it's fair at this point, in a good way and a bad way, right, to describe Penn State's season as a 2-game season. This is it. Okay. It has become overwhelmingly clear that the Big Ten is very hot garbage after
it really
those top 3 teams, right? We're gonna see about Maryland, right? Maryland really hasn't played anybody, but Maryland's 5-0 and has an offense that can score. So to be determined on Maryland. But outside of that, Wisconsin, right? Where's Wisconsin? What is
rebuilding, right?
Right. Iowa, garbage, just garbage. I'm setting myself up to be a meme here, but it just the programs that people expected, I think, in the West to at least put up something of a fight. Minnesota, right, losing to Northwestern. It's just not there. It's just not there. And so, Penn State gets 2 chances, more or less, to make an impression, and it just so happens, not to Penn State's fault, that those 2 teams are top 4 teams, right? That's it. That's all they get. There is no intermediary. Penn State doesn't have an opportunity this year to beat the 22nd ranked team in the country, right? They're just not going to get it. They're not going to get the 17th ranked team in the country. And so that becomes, a little bit of a tough break. But for all of the teams that they do get to play, West Virginia being among them, who is starting to look like what will become the best win of the season outside of, either Ohio State or Michigan, if they win those games. Otherwise, that's it. That's all you get out of the schedule this year.
Julian Rodriguez says, to the title of today's episode, which is going to come up later in True or False, if there ever was a year for Penn State to make to strike while the iron is hot and take the next step into getting the Big Ten championship, it's this year. By the way, Julian, I love your avatar here of Iron Man. Let's get to today's recap of Penn State open practice on Wednesday. Before we get to that, though, Nate, you have an unbelievable gift of looking unbelievably young and having a face that just glows youthful radiance. The rest of the men in the world don't have your particular set of skills. So for the rest of us, you got to extend your prime, right? You don't want to be a running back. You want to be a quarterback. You want your prime to go into your late 30s. Maybe if you're the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, you can go nearly 50 and be in your prime. Well, for your face, that means you need to get Caldera Labs. Caldera Labs is a premium men's skincare product which doesn't use bubbles or strawberries or other things that are going to turn men off from using skincare products, Nate. I don't know what your routine is, but mine is basically sleep on my face, wake up, drink a lot of coffee, and then go on my day. And here's the thing is I was always the young person, and I am starting to not look like it. So I've started using Caldera Lab and their products. They actually, just for the fall, have released a beard oil, which I'm super excited for. It's not here yet. We'll talk about it next week. But Nate, I would even encourage you, again, extend your prime and use Caldera Lab. Yeah. Oh, well, I always forget this part. This is the part you need to know. Use promo code BWI and get 20% off at Caldera Lab. That's the whole thing. Use promo code BWI23. Go to calderalab.com/BWI23 and you will get 20% off your order. So not only, because these are nice products, so you're going to want to use that promo code.
T-Frank, how much beard is necessary? Because that's the troubling thing for me. I'm not sure.
Well, if you go back and you look at some of our shows from last year, that was too much beard on me. I looked like I was having an existential crisis. Okay. And I was on a boat chasing after a whale that I didn't know if it existed or not. So not that much beard, but, just enough that it's obvious. Like, I was looking rough today. I had to actually shave, down here, over here. The hair on my neck was growing into the hair on my face that was growing into the hair on my chest. So I had to do something about it.
I'll check out the other products. I'm sure there's something there. Maybe a sunblock.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's exactly right. Speaking of where you would need sunblock, Penn State practice on the practice field, you were with the offense, so what did you see, and what were the things that interested you during the bye week practice?
Yeah, they threw deep passes, right? It's been the topic of conversation. Everybody wants to know where the explosive passing game is, and that's what they worked on, at least for the portion that I saw. It was on air at first, and then interestingly, they brought in one-on-one matchups, right? And so they brought some of the defense's best defenders and put those guys up to run routes against Penn State's receivers, right? And so what had been working on air very quickly turned to not working against man coverage, right? There were not a lot of success stories, but look, we get a 15-minute window of practice, right? We don't get to see the breadth of what's happening, but I do think it was intentional, but also like in terms of the media being able to see that, I think that was intentional, but also probably a good bet that they're spending quite a bit of time on that, right? That is a portion of the offense. Mike Yurcich talked about it. Something that he said on Tuesday when he met with the media. Yurcich put out there very plainly that he was dissatisfied and concerned about Penn State's passing game. Right? Between Drew Aller and the receivers, they are one or the other is not on the same page at the same time enough, right? And so there's plenty of blame, I think, to go around. But yeah, they've got to be able to hone that in and start to make progress in the passing game, because right now it's just not there at the level of efficiency that they're looking for.
So a couple of things, by the way, we're going to have some of those one-on-ones on Penn State Open Practice Highlights, which is coming up later today. So check that out on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel when that comes out, probably later in the afternoon towards the evening. So you can see some of what Nate is talking about with those one-on-ones. The other thing that I noticed just generally on both sides of the ball is that it was kind of back to basics during training camp, essentially. From what we got to see, there was a lot of, let's work on fundamentals. We have the time this week, so we're going to get back to basics and remind you, hey, keep your pads down, run through contact with the ball, 2 hands on the ball, et cetera, et cetera. Receivers, this is how you run this route. And they were harping on the details of some routes when I was over with the offense and with the defense, tackling, et cetera. So when they had the extra time, they're going back to some of the things that we saw in training camp. So from an informative standpoint, I don't think it was the same as what we've seen previously, where they kind of have to, even though they probably don't want to, show, working on some things for Saturday in front of the media. So that was interesting. Did you mention who was and wasn't there earlier?
I did not. I'm burying the lead here.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody wants to know Katron and JB Nelson. Katron there and practicing. No contact. There's nothing happening there, but able to run around. He's in pads. So the presumption is that he is, if not a full go, close to it. JB Nelson was not there. Did not see him during that portion of practice. That doesn't mean that he wasn't, but at some point during practice, but for the portion that we saw, he was not there. So
can I jump in quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it was very light in terms of starters when the one-on-ones went. There was a couple of routes by the top receivers. I don't think Keandre Lambert-Smith went up against anybody specifically, but then it was a lot of developmental stuff, kind of going back to what we were saying about training camp and getting through some fundamental things. So I saw a lot of emphasis on the D-squad players when we were there. That might have been a time where if you're going to miss a practice for a reason that we don't know about, it would be that one where he's not going to do as much in those situations. So I apologize for interrupting you, but that was just kind of what I want to add to that. I guess, what do you take from that? What's your perspective on him not being there and, at least us not observing him during that part of practice?
He's hurt. He's hurt. I mean, look, there's, James Franklin obviously is unwilling to discuss injuries with any level of detail, but it was interesting on Wednesday night when asked about Trey Wallace, he, and Trey Wallace adjusting, I guess, to being hurt and kind of coming back from it. James said something to the effect of, yeah, he was good to go. And then he tweaked it again. Right. So,
yes.
All right. Tweak. But obviously a tweak is an injury. Okay. So that is an affirmation of an injury.
Yeah.
And
by the way,
hamstring, is it something else? Right. We'll see, but
lower body, something, right? I think that's what I find interesting is he actually gave a couple breadcrumbs, which he normally doesn't do.
Correct.
With that particular injury, when you get stepped on, it's not like, oh, I got stepped on, my shoulder fell out. It has to be stepped on and something else happens.
Correct. So the goalposts move a little bit occasionally, right? And so when it's a guy who is back or in the process of being back or somewhere in that spectrum, then usually there's a little bit more detail that tends to pop out or slip out. And then with Nelson, he said very flatly, in 9 years, I've never spoken about injuries.
Yeah.
But not season ending, right? He is very consistent with that if there is, now it doesn't mean that the guy always comes back, but if there's a chance of returning with Olu Fashanu, we did it last year, right?
Yep.
He's not saying that if there is an opportunity for the guy to come back before Penn State plays its last game, which, as I pointed out last night, the goalposts have moved on that too, right? Is now the breadth of the season is January 8th, if you're considering a 15-game possibility, right? Yeah. So as long as the timeline there is, January 8th, I believe, is 96 days, something along those lines, then JB Nelson sounds like should be back sometime within those next 96 days.
Now, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on YouTube. So I went through the entire series before JB Nelson disappeared, and on the broadcast they show him on the cart being carted off. And there was nothing that indicated he got injured. Like on the last play of the drive, he literally finished the drive on his feet. Yep. So that is a mysterious situation. Did he play through something and then suddenly it got worse? We don't know. There's not even when Olu went out last year, you saw him limp off the field. You saw him get stepped on and then limp off the field, or he had an interaction where then he came off the field, and you can kind of guess generally where the situation might be. JB,
James's James's wording post game that was interesting. I'm not going to read too far into it, but just saying he's back with us, right?
Yes.
So there's a hospital down the street. Not reading too far into that, but he's back with us was a different context from, and included in that is the caveat that JB wasn't seen on the sideline during the rest of the game. Okay, so Katron Allen, on the other hand, he was there. He just didn't have a helmet. So, so something of at least, rising above a minimum level of seriousness, right?
Yeah. Mike is back on the show. I always appreciate Mike showing up and appreciate the donation to the channel. If you want to do that today, the tip jar is always open and always appreciated. Mike says, running game lacking big plays, but are consistently getting 3.5 yards. Given road struggles, home dominance, I think Penn State loses to Ohio State and beats Michigan now. So he's flipping his 11 I'm assuming it's 11-1 prediction from Mike. He's usually pretty positive guy, but he doesn't mind calling out things that he doesn't think are good. Stephen Light says, late to the party, no bye week in blue-white land. Absolutely. Thank you once again for being here, Stephen. Stephen is just like the most dependable, high maintenance, high output, low maintenance viewer, always involved in the show. Appreciate you, Stephen. Before we get on to the next thing, a new sponsor here on the BWI Live Show is Gametime.co. Gametime is a ticket app that helps you find what you want to go to. Nate, I know that you are a cultured individual. I know that you like eating out. I know that you like theater. I know that you like performances and shows and things like that. I am a hermit. I stay in my house and do nothing regularly. So when it comes to, hey, I want to do something and I'm bored, I want to go out and do something, I have no idea where the things are to do or what they are. Gametime is an app that helps you sort by what experience do you want to have? Obviously, it's got sporting events. It's here on the BWI Live Show, so you can check out events in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, wherever you are specifically, and then, of course, Penn State games on the Gametime app, and it's super awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets. Go to Gametime, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use BWI. I'm getting to it early here. You see what I did? Use promo code BWI for 20% off your purchase. Again, that's gametime.co. Use promo code BWI for $20 off your first purchase. Even when I do it right, I did it wrong there. Terms apply again. Create an account. Redeem your code, $20 off BWI. So download the Gametime app and look for the things you want to see and go and have a good time. Enjoy yourself. So once again, thanks to Gametime. Glad they're here. We're going to be giving you more ideas about what you can do later on this year once I started looking through the app and started playing with it. And it's really nice. I really like the design of how it makes it simple to say, hey, I want to see comedy. And then you go and you find all the comedy shows. Most of them are Pittsburgh. There's not a whole lot of like stand-up in State College. Kevin Payne says, great job, boys. Appreciate your insight and wisdom. Well, it's going to get better, Kevin. I appreciate you being here on the show and saying so. But we have to get to our new segment, Nate. As always, we have talked ourselves into a time crunch because we got to get to true or false.
True or false?
We are going to predict things throughout the second part of the 2023 season, culminating in the question that you see in the title of the show. Is Penn State going to win the Big Ten championship game? So we're saving the best for last to get Nate's opinion and his reaction. Our first question here, Nate. Keandre Lambert-Smith will double the next Penn State receiver in targets by the end of the year.
True.
Ooh, all right. Tell me why. Why true?
Well, because he's already there. And I don't see that. I don't see that changing, right? I'm just looking at the PFF stats, but he's got 35 targets, and the next down from him is Tyler Warren with 18, and Theo Johnson with 16. So you've got two tight ends that are really your second and third best options in the receiving game right now. Now, obviously, Trey Wallace coming back and being at full go and asserting himself in the passing game, I think probably changes that dynamic a little bit, especially as Keandre gets more and more attention. Certainly I think that there's a possibility that equates a little bit or evens out a little bit more. But look, Dante Cephas is at 15, Liam Clifford is at 12, McLean's at 12, Wallace is at 11. So if I had to guess who is most likely to bridge that gap and make it so that it's not double, it's going to be Wallace. But because he's missed 3 games effectively, right? I mean, he's got a big gap that he's going to have to make up there.
If he comes back and he comes back healthy, and I think this is the important part of whatever ailment he has, that it fully recovers and he's able to do the things as a receiver, to plant, to turn, to explode, there is a chance, and I'll agree with you that it's true, but there's a chance that he can make up that ground, because as primarily an X receiver in this offense, he's going to see a lot of the coverages, and he's going to see a lot of the looks that Drew Aller really likes to throw. I mean, he got 8 targets in the first game of the season. So that's going to be a part, as you mentioned, if they take away Keandre Lambert-Smith and they give you something else and they give you Trey Wallace, like, he could rack up targets because of his position very quickly. But it's the big old but, Nate.
Yeah, you gotta come back healthy. And there's the other, this is the counter narrative to what I just argued, but once you get to 80, right, the doubling is harder, right? Because the higher the number goes, being double is obviously a greater number as well. So I do expect Trey Wallace to get a significant number of looks this season, but Keandre has been the guy. He's been the steady presence there in that receiving room, and I would very, very, very much anticipate that to remain the case.
So a lot of these are stat-based to start off, and our next one is Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson will finish 4th or worse in sacks on the Penn State defense this year.
4th or worse in sacks. False.
All right.
Yeah. I think, look, part of I don't want to go on about this for too long, but Manny Diaz met with the media on Tuesday and really framed it as, okay, he was alluding to things. Okay. And so when he was talking about players and stats and eye tests and all that stuff, right? And about how his reaction and pleasure in the defense this season is the fact that he felt like they were pressing at the beginning of the season. The first couple of games, they were really trying to have those numbers, right, to make those plays rather than allowing the plays come to them. And so there's a bunch of players that you can point to as fitting into that mold, right? Kalen King is one of them. Abdul Carter is another, and Chop Robinson are the 3 that stand out most to me in terms of preseason All-America / All Big Ten type of guys who don't have the numbers right now to back that up. But his point, and something that he's been pleased by, is it seems like that has dissipated. It seems like those guys and the defense as a whole have fallen into a better groove of just allowing plays to come to them, allowing you just do your job. And if you're doing your job, just by matter of course, the ball is going to find you. These things are going to happen for you as part of the success of the defense. But I would add one thing to this, and I'm not trying to soliloquy here, but the combination of Penn State's offense having the ball for so long and Penn State's defense forcing so many 3 and outs means they're not on the field long enough to have stats.
Yes.
Right? Like Penn State's defense just cannot have stats because the offenses that they faced have been miserable, and the offense that they have working on their behalf has been ball control. So that combination means sacks are down, tackles for loss are down, interceptions are all of those things can't have gaudy numbers in terms of tackles and sacks and those types of things because they just haven't had that many plays on the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to this point, the reason I brought this up is something I noticed this season so far. You can check it out in T. Frank's film room. I think that this week, the Northwestern defensive preview is free. So you can check that out at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Great reason to sign up. Maybe you want to see more of those film reviews. But he's been doing my point here before I got into my cheesy sales pitch was he's been doing a lot of dirty work for the defense to get other guys free. I've seen a lot of Chop Robinson taking one for the team from a guy who is a potential first-round pick. Like, he's lining up at nose tackle in pass rushing situations and taking on double teams so that Adisa Isaac and, Vanover and everybody else can eat. So I think it's an interesting question. That's why I posed it, because I'm good like that. Next question. Drew Aller will finish the season averaging under 250 yards per game, meaning he gets under 3,000 total yards passing this year.
Under
He's currently, I believe, at 218.
218. And you're saying under 250?
Under 250.
I don't know. I'll go false. I'm going to go false, because I do think at some point, so the missing element of the offense right now is the big play. Okay.
Yep.
They're obviously frustrated by it to a certain extent. They are spending time on it. And the thing that I think it does for the stats is you're missing that 30 to 40 yard catch maybe twice a game. That's 80 passing yards, right? That's so it's not as though the completion percentage is right. Okay, he's at 64% right now. It's been up and down. He's had some worse games and some better games, but that isn't throwing for efficiency isn't really the problem right now. It's just that they haven't really had anybody break one, and they haven't taken that many shots. So assuming I'm giving them an optimistic assumption here, but I think that as that part of the game develops for them and they start to strike on it, that will even out those numbers a little bit. You'll see a couple more 300-yard passing days.
I think you'll see more passing and deep passing because they're not going to be facing so many of these teams that are basically saying, okay, take 10 yards. We don't care. Take 10 yards. You're not getting 25. Take 10. And they have been, that's constantly what they've been getting so far this season from West Virginia. The only team that didn't do that was Illinois, and even then they had some select situations where they were doing things on defense to fool Penn State out of playing man coverage into zone and doing some really interesting things after the snap. So our next question is, we'll see Beau Pribula as part of the regular offense, meaning in quarters 1 through 3 at some point this year.
True.
Okay. What are the breadcrumbs that are leading you that way?
It's all been leading to this. And I think that this was the case to begin with, right? Franklin's talked about this. Yurcich has talked about this as far back as January, February, right? Spring practice, that he's a guy who brings something to the table that changes the dynamic of what the offense is. And so it's not just, to me, it's not just about creating headaches for defensive coordinators in terms of preparation, but that is a big part of it. It's also, hey, this can be useful, right? Like, nobody in the world professes to love the hat game more than James Franklin, right? You get an extra hat when your quarterback can run or throw the ball. And so Drew can't run the ball, not with the level of proficiency that Beau can. And now Beau has shown that he can do both. And so is it something that I would expect to like radically transform Penn State's offense and to become a huge part of what it is moving forward? No, this is Drew's show, and it's going to continue to be Drew's show. But there's always this balance of, being inventive enough, right? Like, that's what we're talking about with Mike Yurcich, is that he's not inventive enough with Penn State's offense,
which is he's one of the more creative offensive coordinators Penn State's had from a nobody is dialing up mad scientist things on every single play, but like his formations and his ability to create disguises and to use different plays against each other. Like, I think he is a very creative offensive coordinator. It's just like, have they needed, this is always the question, have they needed that so far?
Correct. And so they haven't. And so some of that but point being, there's an opportunity for more creativity moving forward. And I think that Beau will be part of that.
Yep. Yep, I agree with that. Coming up next, our other fourth quarter superstar, Trey Potts, will work into a regular role with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, meaning he's part of the 1 through 3 instead of just 1 and 2 in this second half of the season.
False.
The Trey Potts truthers are going to be after you in the comments, Nate.
That's okay.
All right.
That's okay. Look.
I heard, Nate, somebody on, like, I read the YouTube comments to, like, make sure nobody's saying awful things. Somebody said Trey Potts needs to start. Nick Singleton needs to go to the bench. So, like, there are some thoughts out there. Like, if there is a thought that can go into a human's head, somebody has thought it and then put it in our YouTube comments.
So, look at where Trey has gotten into the game, right? And this is taking nothing away from him. He's a great addition. Like, it is important to have that spot filled, and Penn State was very unsure that it would have it. And depending on what happens with Katron Allen, he might be number 2 as soon as this week. But next week. But I think that his role and what he does is. It has not superseded, and I know that this is people kind of see what they want to see, but it's not as though Nick Singleton is taking a bunch of negative yardage plays. Okay.
Yep.
These guys have been efficient with their runs and have put Penn State in pretty good when they've run the ball. Pretty good down and distance situations, right? They're moving forward. That's a good thing for Nick. The problem for Nick is he hasn't been able to find that burst and that hole to be able to run through and pick up the home run. But it's not. I don't see it as problematic. I think the way that a bunch of other people do at this point. And Katron's Katron, right? So assuming that Katron stays the same, and Nick adds that element to his game. Right, there's still a fairly clear differential or distinction, I should say, between those two guys and what Trey Potts brings to the table. It's great to have him as an insurance policy and to be able to contribute in his way, but he's not at that level.
He's a good running back, and he's going to produce in key situations for this team. But I'm just going to repeat quickly what I said on the Wednesday show. You can go check out the BWI Live Wednesday show, but putting Trey Potts in the starting, like, let's just go to the extreme. Starting Trey Potts doesn't fix the explosive play problem. He's not an explosive runner. Fixing the problem of the explosive plays in the run game is getting Nick Singleton and Katron Allen to work through whatever they're going through. Okay, we're going to self-edit. Final question here. Penn State will make the Big Ten championship game in 2023. Nate, the big question.
Will they make it or will they win it?
Will they make? Because they're going to go to the Big Ten West, so, like, that's an automatic win at that point.
Yeah.
I'm being disrespectful here, but I'm joking.
Yeah,
like,
it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing out there. Oh man, I still think that they're probably going to. I don't know who's seeing this as optimism or pessimism. I think they're going to split Michigan and Ohio State. So to me, it's not about. I know you want true or false. Oh man. Okay, I'll go true.
Oh, there we go. All right. Now continue, please.
Sorry. No, I know you needed that graphic. I have a problem with predicting one way or the other just because I think it's going to come down to a tiebreaker. I think there's going to be something weird, right? Like they're going to cannibalize each other. So Michigan beats Ohio State. Ohio State beats Penn State. Penn State beats Michigan, right? Like, so however that trapezoid works itself out, that's not the right word, but
it's a love triangle. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
There you go.
Competent Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
However that works itself out, then there's going to be next step down, right? And down and down and down. And I have not taken the time to get familiar with those tiebreakers. So I don't know, but I do think that Penn State's going to have itself in a very good position to certainly be part of that conversation by winning one of those two games.
I appreciate you giving a true false there because I know that I don't necessarily want to do that. And it's fun. We had a good time. I really enjoyed true or false. We're going to have to do this again in the future. So thank you for that. But we got to get to the final segment of the show. This is the crowning achievement every single week of the Blue White Illustrated live show. It's your questions, your thoughts here on the mailbag. So we got a bunch of comments, and if you want to leave your either on replay in the comments, or you want to, if you're in the live chat, tell us, do you think true or false is Penn State making it to the Big Ten championship game? Rob says, I wish that was true. And even before we started, and I know I'm going backwards here, David says false, and he gives a long answer that basically James Franklin is not a good enough coach to be the guy. So David, they brought their questions, they brought their comments into the chat, want to make sure they got their love. Okay, also, speaking of making sure that they get their time in the sun, Like an Auto Styling was here yesterday on the not live BWI Live Show, the one show a week that we do pre-recorded, and he asked this question in the chat. Good morning, thanks for the work during the bye week. Do you see more runs from under center to get Nick going? Nate, is running from a traditional I formation, is that the answer to Penn State's explosive play problem?
I have no idea. You tell me, T.
No.
Frank. You're okay.
No. So the problem is not getting Nick a head start. It's getting Nick to see the hole. And, they've run him. This is another thing as far as like, what have we seen from the playbook? What haven't we seen from the playbook? You've seen portions of most of the playbook as far as I've tracked it so far this season. What we have not seen in a while is the pistol. We haven't seen the pistol with the Cowboy backfield with two tight ends either side, masking what they're going to be running. So that is basically running him from the I formation. It's the same depth. He's under the center of the quarterback. It's just that the quarterback is not at the line of scrimmage. It allows the quarterback then to do the read option, and it allows the quarterback to read the defense for RPOs. You can still do RPOs from under center, but it's much harder, and it's much more immediate sort of stuff. So you're not going to see more of him under center. You're not going to see a traditional... They're not changing the offense 5 games into the season. I'm sure they have some standard backfield. We've seen it, in the T formation where you put Nick Singleton under center and you explode out of the T formation into a traditional single back set. But that's a goal line situation for them. That is not in the regular offense. Maybe it is. Maybe it could be, but I don't think that that's the solution. The solution is Nick playing with more clarity and freedom to hit the hole and to not be paralyzed by his analysis of where the hole should be. This is an interesting question. Maybe we can answer this. Maybe we can't. JWing25, who, by the way, is a new member at BWIillustrated.com.
Hey.
Want to give him some credit? Okay. Happy that he's here? Okay, that's enough. What role do the strength coaches play at a typical practice? Nate, I don't think we get to see their role at practice very much because the warming up portion and the stretching and that stuff kind of happens when we're not there. But what is your read of how they're involved in practice and how they assist the program?
Yeah, that's basically it. Is warm up, right? It's the stretching part, the getting the guys ready for practice. That is their show, more or less. After that, I mean, I've seen Chuck around. I've seen those guys. They don't, they're kind of watching.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's that's the role at a typical practice is stretch.
Yeah, and Chuck Losey, his job is to be intimidating at all times. The mustache, it plays. Question here from Losey's mustache. Look at that. I didn't even plan that. Wow. James Franklin made comments about being coachable in their film review, just like they expect their players to be coachable. From your film review, T. Frank, what do you think James Franklin was coaching his staff on this week? So this is kind of where I get off the train. I am not an expert. I'm not a former coach. I don't feel like I'm qualified to critique the decisions of the play callers. I'm more or less, I'm like, hey, here's what they decided to do in these situations. Here are the plays they ran, and here's what the defense did. When it comes to what they should have done, I have general thoughts, but I don't have a whole lot of, hard opinions about the play calling being basic or whatever fans have said. Like that's, I think, the biggest critique is that the offense hasn't been producing, and so therefore, the offense is broken, therefore it's the coordinator's fault. And defensively, when they give up big runs, it's the defensive coordinator's fault for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if we don't have a whipping boy like Tyler Elsdon. I would say the number one thing that they're doing is they are looking at tendencies. So just this is from what I've learned from James Franklin, what he's talked about is looking at tendencies. What's a good tendency? What's a bad tendency? And trying to eliminate the bad tendencies and accentuate the good tendencies without falling into the trap of doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I think it's just about being open to your blind spots of, hey, I call this run to this side of the field from this formation too many times. And I've got to be able to pivot and see those things and open myself up to, and James Franklin said, open yourself up. Let yourself be opened up to cutting criticism. And not that it's cutting in terms of like being mean and overly negative, but like if you're a proud offensive coordinator, and I'm specifically sitting with Mike Yurcich because that has been the critiqued part, right? You're going to have a hard time saying much about Manny Diaz at this point with the way they've been playing. But the same thing happens like, hey, you've called this blitz. It's been fine. You've called this blitz from the field. You've rotated to this zone drop this many times, and offenses are going to start attacking that. So we need to make sure that we button that up before the next go around in the schedule. So those are the things I would say that they're looking at and making sure that, hey, this is not saying that you're bad at your job. These are the things that we have to make sure we are addressing, and we preemptively address these things for both guys. Because, again, they've scored 30 points a game. They have manufactured points at a high rate. It's just about, some of the ways that teams are approaching them in those situations.
I think that there's an interesting disconnect between, right, when you talk about what can Penn State be coachable at, we always tend to focus on the play calling itself in the 60 minutes of the game. And my read is along the lines of, okay, what has to happen in those 6 other days of the week, right? Like what are the deficiencies of this offense, right? And so when I look at Mike Yurcich and this quarterback receiver situation that Penn State has, it's okay. The plays themselves have not necessarily been the problem during the game. It's that the players running them haven't known what they're doing. Right? I mean, right? Like there's been that. It's been execution. It's been, look, like I saw a comment this week that, light went on to me, but it's almost as though the deep shots conversation takes away Drew Aller's agency to make those decisions. Right.
Yes.
It's as though he's being talked about as though he has no choice but to take the check down. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Right. Like
that has been my whole point this whole time is like the quarterback makes the decision. The quarterback decides to throw the football or not. And
they're going to, right, like oh man, you took right. We ran a shot for you and you decided not to take it because you were so scared that we were going to bench you because you took it. No, that's not how it is. That's not how it works. He gets to make the throw. He gets to make that decision. There are plays that have been designed for him to do that he has taken, good or bad. Yeah. The mature approach, right? He's taken he's taken what defenses have given him. He hasn't taken those shots. And so I do think that there's an element here of, okay, Drew, you have been so exceptional at taking those plays and not putting the ball at risk, but we want you to, right? We want you to do this more. We want you to take advantage of those opportunities.
Calculated risks is what he called it in the first game of the season. He hasn't taken a lot of those calculated. Can I back up what you're saying here? And this is something we've talked about at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for a couple of weeks now. If you go look at PFF, and it's not exactly explosive plays equal big time throws, but big time throws equate to explosive plays most of the time. So he has been throwing so far this season 1.9% of the explosive plays. C. Paul King asks, why do explosive plays have to be a measure of offensive success since we're doing pretty darn good without them? It's about the completeness and threatening every part of the field, because eventually good teams will take away the things that you do well, and you're forced to evolve. So Penn State hasn't shown a completeness yet, and that is causing anxiety for some fans and for Penn State specifically to say this is something we need to improve upon so that we provide a more bulletproof profile. But let's talk about the converse side of what Nate is saying here. Drew Aller has put the ball in harm's way as a quarterback exactly one time, and that was West Virginia, and that was the in route that he threw to Keandre Lambert-Smith. I can physically, I can recall it exactly because it's one time he's put the ball in harm's way. That is 0.6%. That's under 1% of his throws where he's putting the ball. So he's not even creating a situation where Penn State is going to regret a play. I agree, and that's going to get into the next question, Nate. And I want to get to this one because this is, I think, part of the conversation, and this is going to be kind of a major theme for a lot of these questions. Dave B 9127 says, I feel as though the coaches have gotten in the heads of Aller and Singleton. Aller told not to turn the ball over, therefore no explosive plays out of him, taking easy passes instead, and Singleton to wait for the holes to open, therefore making him think too much and not hit open holes fast enough. What do you guys think? So I'll get into something on the back end. Nate, how much do you think that the coaches have gotten into the head of the players and not letting them play with freedom?
I don't think that. Right. It's not a coaching issue. It's a acclimation issue, right? Like the coaches can put these guys in, they can take them on the trajectory that needs to happen. This is, can I go on a tangent? Just a
tangent
okay.
away. We do have a bunch of questions. So I want to get to.
I'll make this super quick. Tiger Woods was like the best golfer in the world, right? Literally winning all the time. And he completely deconstructed his swing and made a new swing because the swing that he was using, while very successful, wasn't sustainable. Okay.
It ruined his back, right? Like that's part of the issue. So he made a conscious choice that this was something that had to happen. I feel like with Nick, that's a little bit of what you're seeing is he was an unbelievable athlete last year. He is an unbelievable athlete. He's becoming a running back. Okay. Yep.
And so there are these stages that Jaywan Sider is working him through right now that aren't necessarily natural to him. That right. They're new things. That's what James Franklin was talking about all last season between Katron Allen and Nick Singleton is that Katron Allen arrived at Penn State as a running back,
a professional. Yep.
Right. And so now, but what's curious to me is I see Singleton taking on a lot of those characteristics where, okay, he's not getting the home run right now, but he's still running. It's not still. It's a newness thing, actually, where he is now running like an NFL running back. To me, like I'm seeing a guy who is taking the 3, the 4, the 5 yards, constantly moving forward, not getting caught behind the line of scrimmage, and is able to be used in the passing game, which is something that didn't happen for him last year. He is becoming a more complete, savvy back. It's just catching up the athleticism to be able to utilize that under those circumstances, which I think is all necessary. Everybody knew that that's what was going to happen to him this year based on how defenses were going to approach him. And so if you can get him at that spot where he's behaving and running like an NFL running back, you're going to be very, very happy because eventually it's going to click and all of these things are going to come together at the same time. But even what I'm seeing right now is not bad. It's good. It's a good thing.
That is exactly. I talk about this. You nailed it in terms of like things that I've seen in the film room is these are good decisions he's making. They're not working out perfectly. And sometimes he's making them a tick slow, but he's seeing the field the correct way. And that's the building block of being a great, as you mentioned, and you characterize it, an NFL running back. So I've just said, like, I don't think it's the coaching staff. I think these two guys need to believe in their abilities at some point in the season to a level where they start to do things that are difference making. And for Singleton, and I'm going to arrive at this through the back door, like the creativity, I don't know that he's ever been a super creative running back, but he has been a guy that, is going to explode through the hole and make you pay for being slower than him. And right now he's learning how to do that correctly and not as, kind of rehashing what you said. So like he just needs to find that confidence to break the rules every once in a while. From Drew Aller's standpoint, had this conversation with Mike Yurcich earlier this week when we got a chance to talk to him. And I asked him, what's the nature, what's the trust factor, I guess, between you and Drew and his ability to make plays once the ball is snapped. So he gave a breakdown of, the kind of the nature of their passing game and the situations that Drew has found himself in. And the short story is Drew is a disciple of Mike Yurcich's plan on offense. He is running the plays how he's supposed to. And he's doing a very good job of identifying where the ball is supposed to go, and that's not always an explosive play. And when it is, if it's not there, he's careful with the football, and he is, I think, uniquely willing to just not care about you and the explosive play and the feel-goods of chucking bombs. He wants to do the right thing. He is a quarterback student. And I guess the point that I'm curious about, and Yurcich talked about this, of like, the more trust we have in him, the more times he can go, hey, I saw this, and so I did something different outside of the normal structure of the progression of the play because I have that quarterback intelligence. And certain guys have an aggressiveness to them, and I think this might come up later, or this is something I saw earlier, of why is Sean Clifford one way and Drew Aller is another, and it's their personality. Sean Clifford read something in the snap and then went to something he wanted to throw. Whether or not he was correct in his read post-snap, I think Aller is more accurate, and he is in terms of his accuracy and in terms of I know what I'm seeing and I can adjust when I'm wrong. So he is being conservative with the football, being safe with it, but he's also just running the play that he's supposed to run and not doing anything creative of, okay, I see this 7 route that I know that based on the coverage, I can throw this instead of the underneath route that'll get us 6 yards. So it's just the balance of those two guys being creative and sticking to the plan. And so far, they've been 5-0 through this. Now, we have like 4 minutes left and 15 questions. Chess Westerton says, halfway through the season, what does the leadership look like in the locker room?
As expected, broad net. Multiple guys. Hunter Norzad is one of them, right? But not the strong singular voices that they had last year, which is fine. It's not an issue.
So the next question here is PSU Ram at the midpoint, barring injury-related reasons. Are there any players you expect to see more playing in the second half of the season than they did in the first? Any players you expect to see less time, Nate?
Oh boy. Expect to see more playing time. No. Nothing that comes off the top of my head. What do you have? You say something and then I'll think about it.
Sorry. Yeah, I would go with, I don't think fans should give up on Dante Cephas. I think that his abilities and his effort are there. He's obviously behind the curve in terms of he's learning on the job. But, 3 months versus 2 months versus 1 month, he's going to, as long as he doesn't lose a thread of confidence we talked about already with guys and playing well, I think he's going to factor more and more into even when Trey Wallace comes back. It may be later in the season, like in November. We'll see. Guys that you might see less, I don't have a good answer on that one. I think it's mostly you're going to see more from guys that are role players later in the year.
Can I go Amin Vanover for more?
Yes.
He's really good, and he's a big asset for them.
Yes, I think he's per play, he is the most disruptive lineman they have, which is crazy to say.
Crazy.
And
yeah.
Who knows what, that's the thing, is like, who knows what happens if he gets more snaps. Maybe he's not going to dominate the way he does, but when he's on the field, he makes more plays per capita. And that, by the way, that is the nature of being good and fresh. Callie Lyon has our weekly, hey, move Caden Wallace, please. Is there a chance that he'll come full circle and get the Wolf Fries experience for 2020? The rationale here today is that it's better for him in his future being in the NFL. And Callie Lyon, I think you would be disappointed in the results of Drew Shelton being the full-time right tackle right now. I don't know that as a pass protector, I have not seen anything to say that he is great, that he's better than Caden Wallace. He's a good run blocker. I think he's going to be a really good tackle. But in terms of consistency, play, power through contact, and his anchor, I don't think he's as good right now as Caden Wallace. So he's going to get starting level experience, but he's not the starter because that's not what they like. Also, they're relatively happy with Sal Wormley. I think that there's a conversation that if they were at full depth right now and they weren't having a critical issue at left guard, would you see less of Sal Wormley? And Vega has been more impactful when he's in the game. I think that's more of the conversation for me than Caden Wallace, who has been, albeit not fully tested by great tackles, but or great defensive ends, excuse me. He's been good. He's been probably their third best offensive lineman behind Hunter Norzad and Olu Fashanu.
Yep. Seconded.
Yeah. Penn State offensive nature. It's interesting this year in Penn State's coaching, particular with the offense on the offensive side of the ball. Can't figure out offensive coordinator Mike Yursich and Franklin seem more conservative with Aller than they did with Clifford. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. In other words, are they really as committed to explosive plays as they were in the past? I think that it's fair to say they are not as committed to explosive plays as they were in the past. There is a trust factor with the sophomore quarterback in his first year where they are allowing him to develop slowly, and he is taking the correct decision. And then as he goes in those crunch times, he is going to be asked to do more and more. But through the first 5 games, operate the offense correctly. They are committed to explosive plays. James Franklin has mentioned it 1,000 times. We have echoed it 1,000 more, creating this narrative about explosive plays, but the offensive nature is not bombs away, and I don't think Aller's nature is bombs away either. Nate, perfect for you. WEP says, is the punting game getting a bad rap? Last I looked, they were 5th in punting average, 4th net in the Big Ten. They're getting lumped in with the kickers, is what he's saying.
Yeah. I didn't know anybody was complaining about the punting, but I don't think they should be. And frankly, I don't think anybody should be complaining about the kicking either. I think it's fine. Falcons has been good. You tried Sahedek and it didn't work out in that first game, but Falcons has seemed to settle in and has been okay. And the punting game, I think is just fine too, right? That Riley Thompson and the Aussie style, he's been effective. So yeah, no issue there.
Here's a question about Theo Johnson, and Beach Wine Guy gave a decided opinion here. And I want to say that Nate and I do not endorse this opinion. We are just answering the question. Why is Theo Johnson doing a bad Mike Gesicki impression, falling off defenders, and not catching much either? Beach Wine Guy, the reason I want to answer this question is because it comes down to what we've been talking about this whole time with Drew Aller and his nature. Sean Clifford was willing to throw the big play, the risky ball down the seam to the tight end. So the nature of the targets you're getting are really important. Theo Johnson is a vertical tight end. He's a vertical receiver. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just off of my eyeball test, everything he's been getting are screens. Yep. So it's like the offense right now is not playing to his nature. It's playing to the quarterback's nature, and therefore he is suffering, and air quotes, suffering on a 5-0 team.
T. Frank, Theo runs fast. That's his thing. Is he runs really, really fast. So I have not seen him be able to use that this season, period.
Yep. Yeah, I think that it's an interesting thing to see if when they go up against more cover 3 teams, cover 1 teams, if he does have more opportunities down the seam and if Aller looks that way. Because I do think that is something that's being, I don't want to say misused, but it is an underused threat in the game. And, he started out run blocking well. And then it was Delaware and West Virginia, and suddenly when they get into Big Ten, he's not run blocking as well. So that's just kind of status quo there. Last one we got here, Nate. Thank you for the extra time today. I always appreciate you being here on the BWI Live Show. Master Jefe asks, from what you guys have seen from the wide receivers this year, who do you guys want to see step up to take the third wide receiver position, assuming Trey Wallace is back at the second position? Who has flashed to you? Who do you think is part of this conversation?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know that there's, put it this way. I am comfortable on Penn State's behalf. I don't have a dog in the fight here, but I am comfortable on Penn State's behalf with riding a hot hand based on week, right? Like week by week. I don't see that, right? My instinct is to say Liam Clifford, right? Because I think that he has demonstrated himself to be somewhat reliable, but I also don't think that he has shown himself to be a game changer, right? Now, 33-yard reception at Illinois aside, that was a big play. I'm just saying he doesn't have that spark.
He has a specific role right now that is very important, but it is
very
not,
much so.
It is not the outside receiver. It's not one of the guys that's going to soak up a volume of targets.
Yep. And I look, Dante Cephas has, we talked about this for 4 months before the season. It is taking time for him. It is taking time for him to acclimate. What was Aller's quote during one of his offseason interviews? They have like 900 signals or something, right? On the offense. I just think this is hard to do. This is really hard stuff. And so it takes some time. Omari Evans, we got to see, right? We got to see. He hasn't done it since the spring game. So there's just Malik McClain, right? Catching, you name it. All of these guys are college football players, which means they have flaws.
They are not. They're not professionals, and they're not professionals in work time either. So, like, again, let's just point out the fact that as much as the standard is the standard, and there are mitigating circumstances that I'm assuming Dante Cephas is going to class at some point. Like, he is not in the building 8 hours every single day learning all of these things. Again, I wrote this over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com after the first game, where Malik McClain talked about, like, he made all of his mistakes with those 900 signals. He made all of those in January, February, and March. Dante Cephas is making those in real time. So he's got to fix that, but it's also understandable, and I think that this is going to be the biggest thing. The ramifications of him not enrolling in January can and could change the fate of Penn State throughout this year, because you're right. I don't want to go too deep into this, but like the progression passing game, they have checks before the snap about, hey, this is what we're changing the play, or we're changing the routes based on the coverage we see. We're going to this. And if he's out there going like, he's going to block when he's supposed to run an out route. And that's, he's got to get up on all of those things. So he can, and he's the guy that has the most talent that is applicable and ready to go. Liam Clifford is a third down chain mover right now in the offense. That's basically been his role. So let's see what happens with Dante Cephas, because I think, to me, that's the guy who best case scenario for Penn State. Nate, thank you so much for your time. Any thing you want to promote over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com as we get going?
More basketball news, which I know nobody here cares about necessarily, but it is there. They have started practice, and then beyond that, I thought that all of this week's interviews were fairly enlightening, right? Yursich and Manny were both really, really good and gave a ton of insight into how those units are performing so far this season. And probably something, to be honest with you, I'm going to write about the conversation we had at the start of this show, before the show, that the Penn State's defense can't have numbers because they're not on the field long enough.
I love a good professional tease, my friend, and you just delivered. Not only did it come full circle, but it also is going forward. So check all of that out. We'll have some T. Frank's film room on some of the Penn State commits this week as well. And at some point this week, I promised it last week, I'm going to get to Ohio State. We're going to do an early scouting preview of the Buckeyes. That's all coming up at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We'll be back on tomorrow with Ryan Snyder. We're doing a recruiting recap. He's done some awesome work detailing how the Penn State players in the class of 2024 have done so far this season. So stay tuned for all of that. We'll talk to you later.